So we came up with a rather novel solution. We liked C and H combined and
Okay.
I, because we like the idea of putting up the smoke-free, drug-free, gamble-free, you know, the safety zone signs.
Yep.
We also like the idea of signs being put up in the quiet places around around share, because the quiet spots are where people are going to go to get high.
Yeah.
You know, so we wanted to be able to reach the people who needed reaching best, you know? So that's why we liked H. And
You picked
Dennis also
C
suggested, yeah,
and H.
C and H combined,
Okay.
and then I,
And I.
yeah.
One.
Because Janet was saying how we were talking about how often we hear people are getting high. Why isn't Cher doing anything about it? And they even do that in the houses, where when people are doing something wrong, they say that Cher doesn't do anything about it. Cher does nothing, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
because they don't understand how it is we work.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So being able to have these conversations is pretty important, because we want everybody to kind of be on board with being part of the solution. All right. So do you like, so one of the ones that you suggested with C, and that's putting up these signs. What would you say to someone who said, you're going to put up just a bunch of signs and you expect addicts to stop using because of that? Because there's a sign?
Janet,
Why are the signs effective? What's the value of a sign?
It gets into their subconscious.
I think that the signs in conjunction with the community beginning to talk about the issue, it works kind of collaboratively, you know, because the sign reinforces the message in the environment, so it's people can see it, you know.
Yes, people can see it. It reinforces the message, and it's a message for everyone. Everyone has to go by the same principle. Everyone has to try to rise to the same community expectation. So, it's not like we're going up to somebody and say to them, you're a big bad pig because you just got high. We're not singling people out. We're not shaming people. We're not telling people that they're a bad person because they have an addiction. We're saying there's a community standard here, and this is what it is. It's that we're an alcohol-free, drug-free, gambling-free, smoke-free safety zone. It's a very indirect way of trying to shift behavior. It's very different than what happens in most of our families, where, if you do something wrong, you get smacked, or you get told you're a bad person, that you'll never make anything out of yourself.
Libby, I feel like.
Sarah, I lost you for a minute.
I know, I don't know that was so weird. I feel like too, it's that power of like subtle suggestion, right? Like a lot of times with people, when you're telling them what to do, they run and go in the other direction. And so when someone can think that it's their own idea, when they take ownership of that decision, and it's something that's heard about, talked about, and the power of suggestion is really, advertisements and billboards and stuff like that is so effective, because it seeps into our subconscious. Like when we're not paying attention, there isn't resistance, and we haven't decided it's not something that we want to do. And so,
yeah, exactly. So it's all of those kind of strategies sort of at the same time. I like what you all came up with. I'm intrigued by it, and definitely I have heard many people say Cher's not doing anything before as well. And I think it's not that we're not doing anything, because we're doing all kinds of things, like we're putting up signs, we're giving out flyers, but people don't think of that as an intervention. They don't think of it as something that would make any difference.
Right.
So it doesn't look like what people are used to seeing is, if you do something wrong, then the security guard kicks you out. That's the kind of
Right.
action that I think people are somewhat expecting, especially in a place of recovery. So that's one of the things we're up against. Good job, group one. All right, group two, which is Dan, Jennifer, and Sarah. What did you come up with?
We came up with A, D, and F.
Okay, A is
We
calling.
like A because everybody's involved. You're getting everybody's involved.
Yep. And then D.
D was kind of picked out because we like the word get sober. So that was just on a fluke.
Well, I think too, it's like the Pythagoras is also that subtle suggestion. It's like a healthy mind game, right? Of like dropping hints, dropping ideas, dropping curiosities.
Yep.
Like we're inviting the lingo, we're using the language.
Yep.
It's this anonymity, it's this group effort, and you know, it requires an involvement, you know, when people want to take part of it.
I mean, when you are a regular meeting goer, you hear these types of stories every time you go to a meeting. So it's constantly, you're in that environment where you're just kind of being bathed in all of this recovery. It's all around you all the time. And it begins to come into you kind of subconsciously, like Sarah was saying. I definitely think that starts happening. You go to that meeting and you weren't expecting it, but someone at the podium shares your story and it just totally resonates with you.
Identification, yeah.
Yeah. People who are not going to meetings don't ever get that. So this is one strategy for kind of bringing them into a meeting, even if they've never been to one, don't know what it is. You know, we're going to assume that some of that is going to resonate with people on some level. Some of that is going to start getting across. Again, it's a rather indirect intervention. What was the third one that your group chose, Jennifer?
F.
F. What made you choose that one?
Just because it says it has a wide range of support groups addressing addiction every day of the week when they reach out to people with long-term abstinence to make sure they're good role models in recovery. So if you have a lot of meetings, you know, it's more accessible for people to go to them, which will help them.
Yeah. And hopefully that will be an attraction. People might get curious. They might be like, gee, you know, there's this meeting on Tuesday night. I wonder what it's like. Maybe I'll go check it out. Like, and we want to make those meetings seem like a cool thing to do, like a very attractive thing to do.
I think that like the major goal too is connectivity. You know what I mean? Like there's so much, I'm all alone. Nobody understands me. I'm so misunderstood. I'm the only one that's like this. If anybody just knew, like if they had a life like mine too, like they wouldn't give me a hard time, you know, like I'm self-medicated or whatever it is. Like that, what do they call it? I forget the word that we use for it, but it's like, Billy would remember I'm gonna mess it up, but it doesn't matter. But it's like that toxic uniqueness or whatever it's called. But
Terminally unique.
Terminally unique, yeah. But it creates for a connection, and when people don't feel so alone, and when people feel a part of, and that's pretty much what they've been looking for their whole entire life. Like I feel that way, and I know I've heard it a million times, you know, that they finally belong somewhere. And so that thing that they're looking to fill that void is now being filled by something positive and healthy.
As opposed to something negative. I've often heard people say, I don't understand why people care if I use drugs. I'm not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
I'm not hurting anybody. So why does anybody care if I like to party?
Because we care about that person and we really want the best we hope the best for them and them to have hope, right? Like we get to be messengers of hope.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do y'all think about these strategies overall? There's quite a few of them.
I think they're very well thought out.
Maybe all very share.
They're very sure. Yes.
I'm sorry, did I interrupt you, Janet? Did you say something?
No, but all the strategies are good. You know, I've seen them in action.
You've seen them in action. What do you think is the hardest part about taking this kind of approach? I mean, what I mean by that is, the reason I'm asking that is, it would be a lot faster if every time someone started using, we just kicked them out. Don't you think it would be faster?
Not
I think
really.
this, yeah, but this approach, people start respecting share. And even though they do whatever they do, they won't do it there. And
They
if
start
the
to,
community sees someone else doing it, they'll step in and say, you got to take that downstairs.
yeah, there begins to be a community standard that everybody starts participating in. And I mean, one thing I've noticed about Share Downtown is someone who's still lost in their addiction will bring their friend in who wants to get clean and say, hey man, check this place out. You could go to meetings here. Even though they aren't ready yet to give up their addiction, the other person is. And so they kind of get them in touch with recovery. That's pretty amazing, I think. Is that something you've seen, Janet?
So this guy, he kept coming, he was getting high every day. And the meeting host, the meeting host and the secretary asked him to help them set up for the meeting. So he started helping them set up, and he would come every week and wait for them. And eventually he started attending the meetings. And he got sober. And one of the guys that brought him in relapsed, but he stayed. So I've seen it working,
It's an amazing story. That's a beautiful story. So that's kind of what we're talking about. I wanted you to see how Share comes together as a staff to try to, when identifying something that's happening in our environments that we want to try to shift, what kind of tools do we use? What kind of approach? Knowing that we don't kick people out, knowing that we want to try to reach out for people who really need recovery and really could benefit from it. Like, how do we make that possible?